Today on Landline, it was a flood twice the size of Victoria.
So this flood is immense. It is a whole world of water in southwest Queensland.
People were unable to hold back the water as towns were submerged.
So I'm in the main street of Thagaminda. The water's got, well, we hope it's peaked now.
And the remarkable aerial effort to help desperate people.
Our kids are in that chopper.
Hello, I'm Pip Courtney. It's a special program today about the catastrophic floods in Western Queensland, which covered an area twice the size of Victoria. With our colleagues in ABC News and regional Queensland and lots of pictures from people caught up in the disaster, we'll bring you stories of loss and hardship, but also of big hearts, solidarity and hope. John Taylor begins our coverage.
Welcome rain in the west.
At first, the rains were welcomed.
After a hot, dry summer, Outback Queensland is rejoicing thanks to a soaking. More than 100 millimetres has been recorded in the southwest, an area that missed the rain from the recent cyclone.
You can imagine a season's worth of rain out of this event, potentially, for some parts, particularly further south.
2025 had already seen deadly record-breaking floods in North Queensland. Then tropical cyclone Alfred tracked unusually far south and hit southeast Queensland. But this was a different weather event.
Nice to see some summer rain, get some grass growing. So before that it was very dry. I don't want to have any of the massive rain that there's been around. We're quite happy to be at the lower end of the scale.
But even then, there was concern there might be trouble.
The Bureau of Meteorology is forecasting potentially heavy falls for the next 2 days in Outback Queensland, with a number of flood warnings across the west.
And then the rain kept falling and falling. Central Western and southwestern Queensland is flat grazing country, with small communities far apart. Suddenly they were either cut off or dealing with water through homes. Places like Ullo, Thagaminda, Quilpie, Adavale, Junda and Eromanga. The tiny community of Eromanga, more than 1,100 kilometres west of Brisbane, bills itself as Australia's town furthest from the sea. But its roughly 100 residents were soon dealing with an ocean of floodwater.
I've been, for the last 3 days, in ankle-deep water in the kitchen, trying to prepare meals to keep the boys fed, get the laundry done. When I have to go out to the laundry, the water's up over my knees.
In Junda, about 200 kilometres southwest of Longreach, Bev Maunsell had to be ferried to safety.
Taken in for a ride.
I was asleep and my son-in-law and grandson arrived and my son-in-law woke me up and I hopped out of bed into the water. It was splash. So they put me in the boat and boated me around to my daughter's place. So that's how I left my place. It was a shock, you know, because it came up very quickly, came up overnight, the water. I had no idea it was in the home by early morning until my son-in-law woke me up.
Many communities were quickly cut off. Huge rainfall totals were recorded in many different catchments. On one property, 2 years' worth of rain in 3 days. ABC reporters like Peter Quattrocelli, based in Longreach, watched a long, dry summer sour into a devastating blow for residents and producers.
Can you describe a little bit for me about what's happening at your place there in Adavale?
Okay, we are totally inundated with this huge flood situation at the moment. It's really fast, it's rising quickly. The water is under my house, it's under everybody's house. It's inside some people's homes at the moment as we stand here. And yes, it is very, very scary, yes.
Eventually, the town's few dozen residents had to be evacuated.
Because this floodwater here is heading south. It's going to Thagaminda and it's going to Quilpie. The river at Quilpie is flooded at the moment as well. You cannot drive into or out of Quilpie. So this flood is immense. It is a whole world of water in southwest Queensland.
So I'm in the main street of Thagaminda. The water's got, well, we hope it's peaked now.
In Thagaminda, the town of roughly 200 people was forced to evacuate to the airport. It's thought only 12 homes didn't have water through them. But locals were thankful for the support they received from the state government and others.
We've had people coming in and out. There's choppers coming in and out of here. You'd think you're in that movie MASH, the amount of choppers that's coming in and out. But people are slinging fuel in, they're slinging hay in, they're taking hay down the river to feed stock.
Off he goes. There he goes.
While people suffered, so too did animals. Cattle and sheep and kangaroos and more in much greater numbers. There are estimates that perhaps almost 500,000 livestock died. Desperate graziers did what they could.
Didn't really get a lot of warning, and just land area sizes, we just couldn't cover that country fast enough to get stock out. And in some cases where we did get them out to what we thought was safe, like had a metre of water over it the next day. So, yeah, things have been better.
The clean-up began when it could, but some people have complained that they were caught off guard because there's no local weather radar servicing the state's southwest and a perceived lack of river monitoring gauges. Both the federal government and the opposition have promised millions towards change.
Now they've got to give them a radar and they've got to give them river gauges. That's what's got to happen. I'm not going to knock the government. Look, the Queensland government's been fantastic to us, and so is the federal government. All this stuff's in the past. You know, we've been asking for it. They've seen their mistakes now, and hopefully they're going to fix it.
Some Western rain gauges reported falls of over 0.5 metre in days, often double what the normally dry region receives in a year. Flood levels broke records. Jenny Woodward, the ABC's weather presenter in Queensland, explains what led to the deluge and the historic flooding.
The Queensland Outback has many river catchments, and for much of the time, these waterways are a series of loosely connected billabongs, shallow streams and sandy, gravelly beds. But when a huge rain event arrives, these unassuming arteries become mighty rivers, overflowing the banks and spreading out as a vast inland sea. Queensland was on a high weather alert in March. There had been record-breaking falls across the tropics. Then, Tropical Cyclone Alfred developed in the Coral Sea. It started barrelling south, threatening the capital, but then stalled off the southeast coast. Pristine beaches were stripped away as huge waves gouged the sand. Finally, the system made landfall as a low, with Brisbane spared the worst, but there was a sting in the tail. Dangerous winds arrived and hundreds of millimetres of rain fell, inundating coastal areas and bringing humid, moist and unsettled conditions right across the state. Parched inland communities could only hope for a slice of the action. Around the 22nd of March, a burst of deep moisture from an equatorial trough in the north of the country started feeding into the northwest of Queensland, and this tropical air mass carrying a lot of moisture into already unstable conditions triggered the dangerous deluge. Initially, outback areas were delighted at the rain, but that quickly turned to dread and then despair as heavy falls persisted for many days. Then, after a brief reprieve, another dumping arrived, powered by the remains of ex-tropical cyclone Diane, which had whipped in from the Kimberley region. The heavy falls broke March and at times annual records. In the 2 weeks from the 21st of March, there were widespread totals of 300 to 500 millimetres and more, while Sunbury Station, northwest of Windora, had 698. Winton recorded 528, there was 504 at Wahroonga, while Quilpie Airport had 410. And for the record, annual rainfall in these parts is generally around 150 to just over 400 millimetres. And satellite imagery that captured Cooper Creek shows the flooding stretched more than 50 kilometres across. The Buller River in Thagaminda reached an estimated 7.55 metres, smashing the old 1974 level of 6.78. The Cooper Creek at Windora Long Crossing got to 8.51, just above the 1974 level, while the Thompson River at Junda also climbed well above the old record. Weather information dates back more than 100 years in many places across the state, and that's thanks to a dedicated network of volunteers who record and regularly report into the Bureau, building up a precious historical resource. But where does all the floodwater from the outback go? Well, let's start with the largest river basin in Queensland, the Thomson-Barcoo-Cooper, covering a massive 1.1 million square kilometres. And ultimately, it drains into Lake Eyre or Catastrophic. But before then, the Thomson passes through Longreach, while the Barcoo runs through Blackall and Barcaldine. They meet north of Windora, and then it becomes Cooper Creek. Joining this vast flow is the Diamantina River, which rises in the north near Kainoona. It meanders around before heading towards Winton, and it eventually passes through Birdsville, the Diamantina Lakes, and into Lake Eyre. The third river basin feeding into this legendary lake starts northwest of Mount Isa. It's the Georgina and Eyre Creek system. It has many assorted inflows and moves through Urundangi, Boulia and Baduri as it makes its way into South Australia. But the Bulloo River has quite a different story. It starts about 125 kilometres north of the tiny town of Adavale and flows south through Quilpie and Thagaminda before draining into sandy country right down near the border. Meanwhile, the mighty Darling River threads its way through 3 states, taking up water from the Warrego River, which has made its way through Charleville and Cunnamulla. And the Darling also takes a drink from the Paroo River after it moves through Yulo. And where does it all end? In the Great Australian Bight, through the Coorong in South Australia. It'll take many weeks for the floodwaters to arrive at their destination. And while we've seen a great lot of heartbreak, in its wake, the outback will be regenerated with desert flowers and an abundance of wildlife, including the return of large numbers of birds to Lake Eyre.
Longreach is in the heart of Outback Queensland and celebrates its resilience and ingenuity at the Stockman's Hall of Fame and the Qantas Museum. Qualities people of the region will need to fall back on as they recover from the flooding rains which inundated paddocks and towns. Christy Saxon-McGrath visited as the waters receded.
It's not often the outback looks like this, green pastures stretching to the horizon. But for the Egling family, the green has come at a cost. Hundreds of millimetres of rain fell within a matter of days, flooding the family's 28,000 hectare sheep station, Wynn Downs. Fences were flattened and stock was scattered and drowned. Martin and Beck were reluctant to speak, insisting others are far worse off. But, in the wake of the disaster, found themselves at the centre of a national story when an unlikely visitor popped in. The Prime Minister, mud on his boots, with the Canberra Press Gallery in tow.
Well, you can see some of the fencing that's been damaged along as we're going along there.
Anthony Albanese got a first-hand look at what the floods left behind and announced $105 million to rebuild exclusion fencing, plus $7 million for emergency fodder drops.
It's still done this, you know.
Yeah.
Lent this fence over on the cattle yards, like it's all concrete and fairly deep post there.
It's not your usual stomping ground for a Labor Prime Minister. This is National Party heartland, and it didn't go unnoticed.
We've got our local Stonehenge cricket team. We've got a group chat page for that, and a couple of the boys have already kindly renamed my nickname to Elbow Egling. So yeah, pretty impressed with that. I've got really good mates. Yeah.
Politics aside, the help is welcome. The Eglings lost more than $100,000 in fencing.
We've got exclusion fencing that's down. It could be anywhere from 8 to 10 kilometres. We don't know yet of exclusion fencing. Then we've got internal fencing. We could be up to sort of 30 odd kilometres of fencing in total. Dams, walls gone out of dams.
And while the full extent of their stock losses is unclear, in a season shaped by destruction, there are some silver linings.
This is the best I've seen this country in nearly 3 years. It's incredible, the response from the country, and I'm really hoping that that's going to outweigh all the negatives. It is really a big relief. We've been feeding sheep on and off now for over 12 months, and it's a huge financial relief too to not be feeding animals.
Further west in the Channel Country, in the small town of Junda, the torrential downpour turned into a rush of water that arrived without warning. The area received more than half a metre of rain within days. Homes were quickly inundated, residents forced to flee by any means possible. Louise O'Neill risked her life to swim her horses to safety.
I went to bed one night and the next morning I woke up and they were in knee-deep water at the highest point in town. So I jumped on her bareback and led the other two out, and I got to the gate just near the grid, and the water was just rushing through.
Residents eventually able to return home to face a mammoth clean-up. As the clean-up continues, so too does the resilience of the people and their communities. It's proof, if anybody needed it, that in the face of natural disasters, the spirit of the outback never wavers. Preserving a way of life that has stood the test of time. In Adavale, the damage has been so extensive, they're considering whether the town should be rebuilt or relocated.
I think it's time that, we looked at the best and the safety of our elderly people who want to live in their own little community and put them somewhere where they're going to be safe and out of flood.
Anne-Marie Lloyd has been sharing the hardships of their Jedburgh station on social media. The family's homestead was inundated, leaving them unable to return for weeks. Then there's the story of the hard-working pups.
On the island for 4 days on your own. I bet these weaners are quiet. Boys been busy.
They were just on high ground on the sand ridge. They were actually with a mob of cattle.
They're still working around the clock.
They were still working. That's what Jeff said. Yeah, no, they had a mob of cattle blocked up. So, yeah, they were still working. Even though they were exhausted, they knew their jobs.
In Adavale, a tiny town of 28 people, the only way out was straight up. With limited dry landing space and no margin for error, residents were rescued by helicopter pilots who landed anywhere they could. The Kylie family were rescued in shifts by mustering helicopters. Pilots landed on the roof of their home.
Chopper took just the 3 girls first up.
Took the 3 kids first, and then
another chopper come down, landed same spot. I jumped in and then he took off, and then the 3rd chopper come in and landed and picked up himself and took us all up to what used to be the old dump site on top of the hill.
The family cat was also smuggled on board. The Cowley family were flown to safety in Quilpie, grateful for those who helped save their lives.
With all roads cut to vast areas of Queensland's outback, it was the locals who reported on what was happening as the waters rose and receded. Kylie, or Kylie Smith, was tireless in her efforts to share stories as homes and properties went underwater. Landline's Helena Bachkowski caught up with her.
I actually wear a couple of different hats. One of them is through the Royal Flying Doctor. I'm the Lighting the Way ambassador. And I see the services that they provide, and they just need to be replicated to other services. They actually have an incredible mental health program, and they're the ones that are going to be getting out on the other sides of those channels. They will not be just here for 12 months. They will be there forever.
When you talk about the people who are struggling, how are they struggling and how does that manifest?
Oh, well, isolation's the first thing. Your neighbour in the city might be three metres away. The neighbours out there, they can be, if they're within distance of 300 kilometres away, you're doing pretty well. So isolation is one of the main factors. We don't have enough services. There are online services, there are phone services, but we need that face-to-face commitment from service providers. And that's my biggest fear, is that these people are going to be left high and dry. And I'm sorry about the pun, but that's what's going to happen. And that's what they're telling me they're afraid of.
You use humour a bit to help with post-flood mental health.
A little bit of banter thrown here and there always helps. Definitely a sense of humour is a good point. And I use a simple way of getting the message across, and it was called Think Red. Recognise, educate, deal with. So it's just something that you can come to mind really quickly, recognise that you or someone else has depression, educate the people about depression, and most of all, educate the people that are caring for you, and deal with the fact that you've got depression and develop the strategies that work for you. And I've had phone calls. Are you okay? Are you getting enough sleep? That's all about the caring process, but you've got to recognise what the issues are to begin with.
So what services are available in these regions for people to find these strategies and get help?
Well, there's definitely online services, and Lifeline have a really good phone service and an internet service, and they've got counsellors on the end of the line. As I said, the RFDS, and then there's our young farmers. And there's something that they're the future of our Australian agricultural industry, so we really need to help them. And, you know, I've said to people, don't cancel your trip, flip your trip. You know, they might be ready now. It's now, not forever. And when, oh my God, the Outback is going to put on one spectacular show.
The Boolloo River, usually a string of waterholes and a few channels, outdid itself in this flood. It took over the small town of Ada Vale and gathered momentum as it headed south to Quilpie. The rain didn't stop for days, and graziers had little to no warning about what was coming downstream and no time to move stock to safety, as Madeline McCosker reports.
In southwest Queensland, around Quilpie and Eromanga, conditions changed so quickly there was little time to prepare. Some, like Wendy Sheehan, were feeding their stock and preparing for drought.
We were really pleased when that initial rain came through, because the forecast wasn't for anything huge. The forecast was for enough that we were thinking, oh, you know, maybe this will give us a little bit of breathing space.
The rain started falling at their property Trinidad Station, 200 kilometres northwest of Quilpie, on the 21st of March. 9 days later, they'd received more than 640 millimetres. It was more than they'd seen in the previous 2 years.
And we're like, this is awesome. And by the time 2 days later, the forecast had increased enormously, but it was too wet by then to be able to go out and do anything.
Downstream from the Sheehan's is Thagaminda Station at the headwaters of Kyabra Creek, which flows into Cooper Creek. It's home to Shona Underwood and husband George Scott, their kids, George's mother Barbara, and staff members. They had to deal not just with the deluge, but all the water flowing down from Trinidad Station as well.
So it was a race against the water. The kids and I were in the boat with our pets, and we had to go to a house that was a lot higher. But I didn't know how high that it would come. I didn't know if we would end up on the roof. I didn't know. There were just so many unknowns that snuck up on us.
As the water rose higher and higher, it was all hands on deck to move furniture, valuables and animals. Some of their staff swam horses through shoulder-deep water so they could reach higher ground.
That was incredibly dangerous because the water was neck deep for the men and the current was unbelievable, but they didn't have a choice. They had to do it to save the animals.
Shona says a week before the flooding, they'd been planning to sell stock in preparation for drought. But now they estimate they've lost up to 1,000 head of cattle. She says the sudden change felt like whiplash.
It just flipped us on our head and we've had to prepare for the complete opposite. So it really was quite a shock.
In Eromanga, 100 kilometres southwest of Quilpie, grazier Brendan Murray had also been welcoming the rain after a dry couple of seasons. It's a different story now.
I think every beast in Western Queensland would be looking at the sky saying, please, no more rain at this moment. For the red grounds, like, it's just sort of rotten. You saw some footage the other day of Henry's motorbike. That's pretty much what it's like. Even to walk on, it's just treacherous. Just break through it and sink to your knees.
Early counts show he's lost more than 6,000 head of sheep. The clean-up is overwhelming, but he's focused on keeping his remaining animals healthy.
Well, whatever sheep we have got, I've talked to my shearing contractor, and whatever we have got, we're going to bring straight to the shed and shear them. But you're talking about wool that's been wet for 10 days and covered in mud, so there's really no point taking the extra month to get it off. We'll get it off ASAP, and I've got a friend that's going to lend me some rams, and we'll chuck them in and hopefully start again. But it's a long way back from this one.
Now the sun has returned, floodwaters have receded and paddocks are starting to dry. All efforts are on recovery. Back at Thagaminda, the mud and silt are proving hard to clean.
We just had these big sort of rubber scrapers that we made in the shed to scrape out the majority of the mud and silt, and then you hose the mud and the clay and then scrape it out, and then you just keep brushing it with a broom and hosing, and then you might have to mop it 12 times before you get that really, really fine silt out.
The bigger and longer job, though, will be rebuilding livestock numbers and fixing fences across an area twice the size of Victoria. Stephen Tully from Bungendary Station near Quilpie says it could take a decade or more for many in the region to get back on their feet.
I think the people that aren't hit as much, it might take at least a year or 2 years. But for some of those people that have been impacted in a big way, it'll be 5 to 10 years, absolutely.
In the days and weeks since the rain began, there's been heavy criticism of the lack of rain radar information for such a vast area. In southwestern Queensland, locals say they're concerned about the gaps between radars. Wendy Sheehan says it leaves everyone in the dark about big weather events.
We're fairly well off the edge of the long-reach radar, so we could see rain coming down on the radar, and it would be quite yellow, which is, heavier falls, and it would be fading out and disappearing as it came down in our direction, and you wonder whether it's actually just fading out, which it does. I mean, rain doesn't just go forever, or whether it was just disappearing off the radar, and it was just disappearing off the radar.
Her neighbour, Shona Underwood, agrees, saying with more warning, they could have moved stock to safer ground.
It could have saved an animal welfare crisis and us losing all of our animals, and I mean everybody that has been affected by this flood.
The flooding has been a life-shattering event with deep personal costs.
They've gone through the adrenaline rush now of actually saving those stock. So while they're saving the stock, they're seeing some terrible scenes. The helicopter pilots were day in, day out seeing horrible, horrible stuff. When that winds down and there's a little bit of a calm, that's when it's going to hit. But we have been on to everyone that we can consult with to make sure that mental health stuff is there and that support is there.
The announcement of financial assistance has given some hope for producers.
The best mental health is hope, and that is why these packages coming through so quickly have been an absolute godsend. It's given people hope, it's given people an ability to plan forward and not sit and sulk.
And solidarity has given strength, even in the worst of times.
We've been texting each other through the middle of the night, making sure we're okay. just for our own support. It's been really, really nice to talk to other women going through the same thing.
Flood stock losses are estimated to be around 170,000 cattle, sheep and goats. But that number is projected to increase to nearly 500,000 head once the mud dries and paddocks can be accessed. State and federal government assistance is available, but some producers may never recover generations of genetics. And countless wildlife has also been wiped out. Landline's Helena Bachkovsky compiled this report, and a warning: it contains distressing images.
Properties in the flooded region are vast. They run cattle, sheep and goats in their thousands. It's estimated the muddy water has claimed more than 170,000 head. And that number is likely to keep rising as graziers overcome the mud to search every channel and corner of their land. Louise Hock runs both cattle and goats. She's pretty confident the cattle are fine, but the goats...
We have fairly substantial goat losses due to the flooding. We haven't been able to get around some of the parts of the property yet.
With about 25,000 hectares just outside the town of Quilpie, Louise says 85% of her property went underwater. Her goat herd was 7,000 strong. Just under half will be lost.
We're estimating like 3,000. We sort of won't know for sure until we muster, but there's a lot dead, a lot lost. So, yeah, not great. One good thing about goats, they do rebreed fairly quickly. So, I'm sure from what we have left, we'll be able to rebuild the goat numbers fairly quickly, hopefully. I think it's replacing all the lost infrastructure, like just a lot of fencing, but not just fencing, like, wing banks washed out, dam banks washed out. We've put a lot in the last 2 years into spreader banks and ponds and diverting water, to regenerate grass, stop erosion. All that's just completely washed away.
Recovery will take years. Shane McCarthy is the General President of AgForce Queensland and has been in constant contact with members.
We won't know the full extent of how many livestock deaths we have or missing stock until it won't be for weeks, even months or even longer, until they can fully get around, until they can muster, bring the stock in to be able to get a full count.
Beyond the immediate hit to herd numbers, there will be profound and long-lasting consequences.
There are some people who've lost 100% of their herd, which then becomes a problem because not only is it hard to replace those animals and it's costly to replace those animals, but then you're also missing years, generations of genetics that have gone into breeding those livestock.
Graham Bolton is Director General of Queensland Department of Primary Industries. With the projected losses staggering, his aim is to get the 1,300 primary producers in the region back on their feet and working again.
We are estimating stock losses of up to 20% within that region, and that is looking at losses of cattle about 207,000. We're looking at losses of about 176,000 for sheep and about 41,000 for goats.
To help overcome the loss of infrastructure, the Queensland Department of Primary Industry is offering, in the first instance, freight subsidies of up to $5,000 per property to move essential materials, disaster assistance loans up to $250,000, disaster assistance with essential working capital loans up to $100,000, exceptional disaster recovery assistance grants up to $75,000. The Rural Financial Counselling Service can help you apply for government financial assistance and other rural financial and counselling advice. And you can check out the Queensland Rural Investment Development Authority website. The toll is not just on livestock. Wildlife has also been impacted. Jeff Penton from Desert Channels Queensland has been monitoring the region's native animals and says the losses will be immeasurable.
The stories we've been hearing from producers and
some of the chopper pilots that have been putting fodder out, just what they've been seeing, we're pretty confident we'll be talking about tens of thousands of animals. The ones particularly affected by the floods are anything that can't fly away, swim away or climb a tree. So we've got lots of things, emus, echidnas, reptiles, some of our marsupial mice, even bilbies, that will have been affected by the floodwater. They just wouldn't not have been able to get away fast enough.
As floodwaters recede, graziers like Louise Hogg are still relying on hope.
We're hoping to come back from this for sure. But yeah, like it's going to be a long road ahead.
As the waters rose on stations and in towns, there was only one way out, by air. A fleet of mustering helicopters took to the skies, rescuing people stranded on rooftops and dropping fodder to livestock marooned on islands in a muddy inland sea. Grateful evacuees called them the angels in the skies, as Ariana Levy explains.
Lining up one by one. This is Western Queensland's frontline response to the worst flooding in more than 5 decades. Day in and day out, aircraft of all shapes and sizes pick up and drop off vital supplies. Aerial assistance has been a lifeline for isolated communities.
There's about 700 kilos of hay there.
And everyday graziers became rescue pilots.
And away he goes.
Throughout this disaster, they've been our eyes in the sky.
Well, it worked out well. Everyone's sort of getting out there and helping each other. Yeah, there's not a lot of room here at the airport now, so yeah, everyone sort of works in well with each other. We're all there to get the job done at the end of the day.
Tyler Slippers used his helicopter to resupply fuel for other pilots between Longreach and Junda, which also gave him a bird's eye view of the devastation.
It's pretty crazy to see this. It's just pretty much a sea of water. I've never seen nothing like this before. But yeah, seeing cattle and sheep and everything like that stranded on the little islands, yeah, it's sort of heartbreaking.
Meanwhile, pilot Declan Bailey has been part of the relief effort since the water rose.
I don't think we can really appreciate, the hardship and the heartache that is going on out there. But when I've been flying around and I've seen some of these flooded communities, these stations, I've got a little bit of an insight on how hard it is for these guys.
He's usually assisting aerial firefighting in the south, but his skills are now being used for flood support.
The impact starts before you touch down because you actually can see all the devastation around you, and then you get in and you can see all the people standing around, and you don't know what they need, but they need something.
Hugh King has been flying volunteers and disaster recovery personnel for the last 2 weeks.
Aside from my ag background, I do love doing this stuff because we're helping. Whether we're firefighting with the fire bombers or supporting the QFIS staff in the fires and bushfires, or we're doing this stuff, you're not just doing it for a paycheck, you're doing it because you're helping people. And it makes it worthwhile, especially when the days get very long.
Charleville has become a hub for emergency responders, from coordinating hay drops to fodder and even pet food. And for many, it's been a godsend. Locals have shown their support in any way they can. Quilpie resident Mary McNair has been keeping pilots caffeinated for free.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, shuckers! It's been really nice to be able to give them their coffees in the morning before they head out for a big day. To the people on the properties that are seeing these choppers come in with their supplies and groceries and just necessities, hay for the livestock that are still have survived, they're the heroes.
Hailed as angels in the sky.
They have special wings other than the ones that carry them.
But for most pilots, they say it's just part of the job.
I'm a pilot, I'm a drop duster and a firefighter and a grazier. I'm just here to help. No, I don't want praise, I just need to, what we can do to get the job done.
Yeah, I think Angels of the Sky's getting a little bit, you know. But for the people that know me, I think Angel would be a long way down the list of terms that they would call me. The Australian spirit has been helping people out, and I think that's why, you know, I'm proud to be out here.
All eyes were on one tiny town in particular. Thagaminda, 1,000 kilometres west of Brisbane and home to about 200 people, copped the brunt of the devastation. Record-breaking flooding caused the entire town to be evacuated to the local airport, with around 90% of homes being inundated. Here's Laura Lavelle.
It's March 30, and this makeshift levee is the only thing standing between the small town Thagaminda and total inundation. It's a race against time to build it. Waters are rising, and this is the only hope of slowing or stopping them. But the town is banding together for the first of many sleepless nights to protect their community, refusing to down tools until everything that can be done is.
The whole town, you know, everybody's just jumped in a truck or a loader or an excavator or whatever, and they've really stepped up to the plate and given us a good hand.
Little did they know, it would never stand a chance at stopping the sea of water heading down the Bullu River from Quilpie towards the town. And how could they? The river gauge upstream was rendered out of action. Thago could only guess at what was to come.
We've got a saying here that we've said for a lot of years, like a flood's like an old friend coming home, because you really need them, you know. They're a bit of a nuisance for a while, but once they go, you get fat cattle and fat sheep and everything goes well for them. And the economy starts moving again. You know, you can make money out of mud, but you can't make it out of dust.
But in this case, it's like that old friend overstayed their welcome, trashed the house and drank all the beer. As the town awoke on March 31, locals knew this was no ordinary flood.
Everybody was running around getting themselves sorted because it just hits you, and they're all everywhere trying to organise themselves. We were out helping all night, really, getting people that are underwater now into all their stuff out of the water.
97 people went up to our evacuation point up at the council depot. 12 houses, I think, has been inundated with water.
Unbelievably, by the end of this disaster, it's estimated only 12 homes remained out of the water. That night, the once high and dry council depot, sitting on a small stony hill, was also compromised when the already faltering levee finally broke. By April 1st, Thagaminda looked a whole lot different. Water was where it had never reached before.
The amount of rubbish and things that are starting to pile up and go through town. It's there's gas bottles and building supplies and tyres and all the other stuff that a town has all going through here. That's from our shed, which is about a kilometre away. Oh, man. Unbelievable.
Everyone from the town of roughly 200 people were evacuated to the airport, forced to abandon their homes and pets and sleep in their cars as muddy water claimed all in its path.
It's pretty much submerged. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, it's underwater. So, like, I was staying with family and, yeah, it's absolutely devastating.
Some four-legged friends were rescued from homes and carried to safety. Other owners went back in to get them themselves.
Sorry, what are you doing?
Going to get my cats.
Righto.
I've got 2 cats back at home and the water's too high to go and feed them, so I'm hoping I can get them out.
And the boys have got to look after you?
I hope so.
This helicopter that's just touched down behind me here is carrying the latest group of evacuees from Thagaminda. As they arrive in Charleville, there's little indication of when they'll be able to return home. It could be days or even weeks before the water subsides, even longer for roads to safely reopen.
Yeah, my son, my daughter-in-law. Yeah, they lost everything in the house. Yeah, they've lost everything. We were still standing up in the same clothes that we were standing up in 3 days ago.
It's just devastating to fly out and actually see it for yourself. The water everywhere. There's literally a tiny little island that we're sitting on, and that's it. So much water. It's an inland sea out there. It's just going to take months of recovery at this stage.
Evening here at 6:30 in Thagaminda.
Out of the disaster, a star is born.
Here at Thagaminda, we've had a major turn of events. Sources tell me it's slightly moderately above wet here in Thagaminda.
With a makeshift microphone, doubling as a cold one.
We have the river high. It's currently at 6'3".
What started as videos posted by his uncle for a few laughs,
that's the river,
quickly progressed into a full-fledged responsibility for 18-year-old local James Pike.
It's currently at 7.55, 7.55.
Watching his daily updates became a much-needed distraction for those doing it tough.
I wouldn't say it's boosting morale, but it's a bit of a joke. My uncle Dogger, he's a bit of a Western icon, and he asked for a bit of an interview of it, a bit of a judgment, and just went from there. Everybody loved him.
But as night 3 of sleeping in cars at the airport rolled around, frustration set in.
A lot of these people have not slept for 3 days. So that makes everyone very emotional anyway. Some people that are getting very angry now because it's frustration and it's tiredness. And we all understand that. And I think everyone is feeling the same way, but there's nothing we can do about it.
The hardest part for locals was not knowing when they might be able to return home or if Thargo had weathered the worst. Aerial surveys of upstream catchments suggested the peak had arrived, but there was still no way to know for sure if more water was on the way.
One of our challenges yet again is to do with river gauges. We're quite substantially higher than 1974 flood. We've now lost all communications with the river gauge that is up in Autumnvale. That is a key gauge for us to know what is coming to Thagaminda. What would make that better is if we had more than 2 river gauges in the Buller Shire Council.
Their calls appear to have been answered, with both the federal coalition and the Labor government promising money for radars. The coalition would not confirm if the funding extended to upgrading or building new river gauges. Local federal member and Nationals leader David Littleproud said it would ensure the regions are given the funding they deserve and all options for future projects will be considered. Labor said it's already in the process of acquiring around 1,000 additional gauges for Queensland. The ABC understands 8 gauges for the Buller River, which runs through Thagaminda, will be built. Locals are hopeful upgrades are imminent, so when the floods do come again, they'll know exactly what to expect and prepare for.
It's a bit of a war zone here in Thargo.
For now, the focus is on the clean-up and recovery.
That's 3 times. It's been locked.
The streets of Thagaminda are caked with red mud. Businesses and homes have been devastated. Some have lost everything, and not many are insured.
Oh, it just makes you cry, I'll tell you. And people, they're at the wrong end of their life to go into this sort of thing, you know, they'll never see the end of it. If they've got to pay for this, you know, they're buggered with their bloody retirements and all this, you know.
But resilience and the indomitable outback spirit is holding the community together to face the challenge ahead. Hopeful Australia is willing to lend them a hand, not a handout.
Thagaminda, I'm probably going to cry, but it's one of the most amazing communities. Like, everyone just, came together as one. And it's so good to see, because you don't really see that these days.
And, mate, our town needs a big hand. And look, we don't ask for anything. We've never, ever... It's something that's happened, but, by geez, we're screaming for help at the moment. We are.
Help has arrived in Thagaminda for the clean-up. Caravans are being delivered for those left homeless, and a local appeal aims to give everybody in town a fridge.
We're all displaced. There's not a person in town that isn't affected.
It doesn't matter where we look. Everybody's whole life is out on the footpath.
Thagaminda is unrecognisable. The water has receded and residents have returned to their homes and businesses.
What do you do? What do you do? How do you deal with that?
Jeff Pike's business copped a wave of water as the hastily built levee bank broke. The damage bill...
Feel like close to $1 million, I'd reckon. It's probably what we've done.
And you're not insured here, are you?
We're not insured, no.
The mud army has arrived and waterlogged belongings discarded on the street.
Seeing your life in a pile of rubbish on the side of the road, that's tough.
I thought the floor I thought would be okay. The water unit I thought would be okay. Our bedroom suite I thought would be okay. They're all gone, yeah.
But mourning the loss of the things that cannot be replaced hits the hardest. Donna Humphreys lost football jerseys that belonged to her late son.
It was quite upsetting when I saw that, and I actually lost it for a while over that.
Recovering has been non-stop for over a week. Reality setting in the rare moments when the tools are downed.
Because when you're doing, you glaze over all of the effects. But when you're actually here for yourself, that's when it drives home, and it drives home really, really hard. And it rocked me to my soul.
There's concern some homes are beyond repair.
I think this house here will be, I don't know, I think it'll be condemned.
Caravans are being brought in as temporary accommodation for those left homeless. The townsfolk pleading not to be forgotten, inviting visitors to come as soon as they're back on their feet.
The former Mayor of Quilpie, Eromanga grazier Stuart McKenzie, has been appointed to lead the recovery effort in Western Queensland. He spoke to Aaron Kelly.
Stuart McKenzie, thanks for speaking to Landline. Where do you begin the job of rebuilding this region?
Well, it's a good question, and it's a huge task, and it's going to take a long time. But you begin at like all sort of disasters, you begin with the response stage, the essentials. We've got this to this point. We haven't lost any lives. We've got people that have had to be moved out of their homes. Whole towns have been inundated. So the response stage is trying to get those places cleaned up and back to a point where people can move back to those homes. We also had this another exercise going on at the same time where we had all these sheep and cattle and goats stuck in floodwaters that would have died unless we get feed to them. So that's been going on right from the start as well. So it's really just getting through these first couple of weeks and trying not to lose any more infrastructure than we have to, and not lose any more stock than we have to. And in this process, these couple of weeks, we're thinking ahead to how we're going to rebuild. So that's where we're at. We're going into that sort of recovery stage now.
Will this disaster force some people off their properties?
I think only if they were sort of heading that way anyway. I'd be hopeful that, because things were actually things were going pretty well. We've got a lot of young families on properties, and it's hard for them because they haven't lived through this before. The older ones, like myself, have been through a few, so you know the recovery process. But until you've been through it, you don't actually quite understand. So yeah, but we certainly hope that all those young people, they will get through this, look back on it in a few years' time, and they'll look back on it with some pride that they suffered what they did, they got through it, and they got back to where they wanted to be. And the same with the people in the towns with their homes that have been inundated, that they get them cleaned up and they get them back, and hopefully they might end up a bit better than they were before. You know, who knows?
What's your message for the people of Western Queensland?
Look, hold fast. We have got some pretty good financial packages that we're sort of, preparing at the moment. We have the support of both levels of government, and the councils themselves have generally been very, very good. And we're on your side, and we're here for the medium term and the long term. And things will improve. You'll enjoy a beautiful season once all the water's gone and the mud's dried up and things are growing again. Things will improve and things will get better, but it just will take time.
The recovery is going to be long and hard, and no doubt there are many of you who will want to lend a hand. If you're able to support flood-affected communities, the ABC Gives website has a list of organisations accepting donations or goods for those in need. Here are some of the organisations you can start with. And that's the program for today. It's been tough viewing, we know. Thanks for sticking with us to see what's been happening in Western Queensland. And before we go, a big thank you to the many amazing and exhausted people affected by the floods who helped bring their stories to you. Maybe pay them a visit after they've had a chance to clean up. From all the team, thanks for your company today. We look forward to seeing you next time on Landline. Bye for now.